The flowers on her grave for 6 months. He'd watched the poor woman visit his wife's grave. For 6 months, she'd left flowers and whispered secrets to the stone. Today, he finally had the courage to ask her why. Her answer would shatter everything he thought he knew about the woman he'd married. The November rain had finally stopped, leaving the cemetery paths slick with fallen leaves. Daniel Crawford sat in his black Mercedes, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the woman through the mist-covered windshield. She was there again, kneeling in the wet grass beside Catherine's grave. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, like clockwork. The woman couldn't have been more than 30, though the way she carried herself, shoulders perpetually hunched, eyes always downcast, made her seem older. Her coat was thin, patched at the elbows, and her shoes were splitting at the seams. The flowers she brought were never expensive. Today it was daisies from the grocery store, their petals already browning at the edges. Daniel had memorized her routine by now. She would kneel, place the flowers carefully against the headstone, and then sit back on her heels. Her lips would move for exactly 7 minutes. He'd timed it, as if she were having a conversation. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled. And always, before she left, she would press her palm flat against Catherine's name, carved in marble, and close her eyes. It had been driving him insane. Catherine had been dead for 8 months. A brain aneurysm, sudden and merciless, while she was shopping for groceries on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. One moment she was comparing apples, the next she was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just the phone call that had split Daniel's life into before and after. He'd thought he knew everything about his wife. They'd been married for 12 years, together for 15. Catherine had been his college sweetheart, his business partner in the early days of his tech startup, his closest friend. She'd been there when he was nobody, when they ate ramen in a studio apartment and dreamed of success. She'd celebrated with him when the company went public, when they bought the house in Pacific Heights, when he made his first million and then his first 100 million. She'd known all his secrets. He'd thought he'd known all of hers. But who was this woman? Daniel had asked everyone. Catherine's sister didn't know her. Her friends from book club had never seen her. Her colleagues from the nonprofit where she'd volunteered had no idea. He'd even hired a private investigator, feeling guilty and invasive the entire time. But the report had come back frustratingly sparse. The woman's name was Rosa Martinez. She lived in a studio apartment in the Tenderloin, worked 2 jobs, one cleaning offices at night, another waitressing at a diner, and had no apparent connection to Catherine Crawford whatsoever. Yet here she was, every Tuesday, mourning his wife like she'd lost her own mother. Today, Daniel decided he would finally ask. He waited until Rosa stood up, brushing the grass from her worn jeans. She was turning to leave when he opened his car door. The sound made her freeze. "Excuse me," Daniel called out, his voice rougher than he intended. Rosa turned slowly. Up close, he could see that she was younger than he'd thought, with dark eyes that held a weariness that had nothing to do with age. She looked at him with instant recognition and something else. Fear? Guilt? "I'm sorry," she said immediately, her accent slight but present. "I didn't mean to bother anyone. I'll go." "Wait." Daniel held up a hand. "Please. I'm Daniel Crawford. This is my wife's grave." Rosa's face went pale. "I know who you are." The words hung in the cold air between them. Daniel felt his heart hammering. "Then you know I've been watching you. For months. And I need to understand why you come here. How did you know Catherine?" Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her cracked shoes, at the flowers she'd just placed, at anything but him. "I should go, please," Daniel said, and he heard the desperation in his own voice. "Please. You're the only person who visits her grave besides me and her family. You bring her flowers every week. You talk to her. I need to know why." Rosa was silent for a long moment. When she finally looked up, tears were streaming down her face. "Your wife saved my life." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. "What?" 3 years ago, Rosa began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was living on the streets. I'd been there for 6 months. I came to this country with my daughter when she was 5, trying to escape her father. We had nothing, but I was working, making it work. Then I got sick, lost my job, lost our apartment, lost everything." She wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding herself together. My daughter, Elena, she was 8 years old. We were sleeping in my car in a parking lot downtown. It was January, so cold. She was coughing, getting sicker. I was so scared, I didn't know what to do. I was ready to give up, to call her father, to go back even though I knew what he would do to me. Anything to get Elena somewhere warm. Daniel stood frozen, listening. One night, your wife found us. She was leaving some charity event downtown and saw us in the parking lot. She could have walked past, everyone else did. But she stopped. She knocked on my window. Rosa smiled through her tears. She was wearing this beautiful dress, high heels, diamonds, and she knocked on my car window and asked if we needed help. Catherine never told me, Daniel breathed. She asked me not to tell anyone. Rosa wiped her eyes. She said her husband was a good man, but he didn't understand that some people needed help in ways that weren't official, weren't through the right channels. She said you'd want to do everything properly, through organizations and programs, and that was good, but sometimes people just needed immediate help. She said she had her own money from before you were married, and she wanted to use it the way she chose. Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Catherine's trust fund. The money her grandmother had left her. She'd always been vague about what she did with it, and he'd never pushed. He'd assumed she donated it to her nonprofit, maybe invested some of it. He'd never imagined this. She paid for a hotel room for us that night, Rosa continued. Took Elena to a doctor the next morning, got her antibiotics. Then she helped me find an apartment, paid 3 months' rent up front so I could get back on my feet. She helped me get my job back, and when that didn't work out, she helped me find 2 new ones. She bought Elena school supplies, clothes, shoes. She tutored her in English twice a week. Rosa's voice broke. She saved us. She gave us our lives back, and she did it all quietly, never asking for anything in return, never telling anyone. She just said that everyone deserves a chance, that circumstances don't define character. She said she believed in me when no one else did. Daniel had to sit down. He lowered himself onto a nearby bench, his legs suddenly unable to hold him. How often did you see her? Every week, for 3 years. She'd meet Elena after school sometimes, help her with homework. She came to Elena's 10th birthday party in our tiny apartment and brought a cake. She was at her school play. Rosa's voice cracked completely. She was like a grandmother to my daughter, like a mother to me. Why didn't she tell me? Daniel's voice was barely audible. Rosa sat down beside him, maintaining a respectful distance. She said she would eventually. She said timing was important. She was waiting for the right moment, I think, and then she couldn't finish the sentence. They sat in silence. 2 people bound by grief and secrets. There were others, weren't there? Daniel finally asked. You weren't the only one. Rosa nodded. I met some of them at the funeral. We recognized each other somehow. People she'd helped, people she'd saved. There was a young man whose college tuition she paid, a woman whose medical bills she covered, a family whose house she saved from foreclosure. All of us, keeping her secret because she asked us to. All of us, loving her because she loved us first when no one else would. Daniel thought of the funeral, of the faces he hadn't recognized. He'd assumed they were people from Catherine's nonprofit, or distant acquaintances. He'd been too lost in his own grief to really look at them, to see them. They'd been there mourning the woman who'd changed their lives, and he hadn't even known. Why Tuesdays, he asked. That was the day we met. 3 years ago, on a Tuesday in January. I'd come at 3 o'clock because that's when she'd meet Elena after school. I'd bring daisies because they were Elena's favorite flower, and Catherine always bought them for her. Daniel felt tears streaming down his own face now. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew everything about her. You did know her, Rosa said gently. This was part of who she was, the kindness, the generosity, the way she saw people, really saw them. That was your wife. You knew that about her. You just didn't know all the ways she showed it. I could have helped, Daniel said. If she'd told me, I could have done more. I have resources, connections. I could have. She didn't want to do more, Rosa interrupted softly. She wanted to do it her way, personal, direct, one person at a time. She said big donations and charity galas were important, but so was looking someone in the eye and saying, I see you, I believe in you, let me help. She said you were changing the world with technology and business, and that was wonderful, but she wanted to change individual lives, one at a time, with her own hands. Daniel covered his face with his hands. He thought of all the times Catherine had been vague about her afternoons, her errands, her mysterious appointments. He'd assumed she was shopping, meeting friends, doing volunteer work. He'd never pushed because he trusted her, because she'd seemed happy, because their life together had felt complete. Now he realized there had been this entire dimension to her life that he'd never known, not because she didn't trust him, but because she'd wanted this to be hers, her purpose, her mission, her way of making meaning in a world where she could have simply enjoyed the comfort their wealth provided. "Does Elena know?" he asked. "About you? That I come here?" "Yes. She wanted to come today, but she had a math test she couldn't miss. Catherine would have insisted she stay in school." Rosa pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly, and showed him a photo. A young girl with braces and bright eyes holding up a report card full of A's. "She wants to be a doctor, because of your wife. Catherine told her she could be anything she wanted, if she worked hard and believed in herself." Daniel stared at the photo. This child, whose life Catherine had transformed, whose future she'd secured. How many others were there? How many lives had his wife touched while he'd been busy building his empire? "I'm sorry I never told you," Rosa said. "After she died I wanted to, but she'd asked me not to, and keeping her secret felt like the last thing I could do for her. I didn't mean to cause you pain, seeing me here and not understanding." "No," Daniel said firmly. "Don't apologize. I'm the one who should apologize. To you, and to Catherine's memory. I should have known her better. I should have asked more questions. I should have been paying attention." "You loved her," Rosa said simply. "That's what matters." "So did you," Daniel replied. They sat together in silence as the afternoon light faded. Around them, the cemetery was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the rustle of wind through the oak trees. Finally, Daniel spoke. Would you and Elena like to have dinner sometime? I'd like to hear more about Catherine, the Catherine you knew. I feel like I've been mourning half a person, and I want to know the whole woman." Rosa looked at him with surprise and something like hope. "Elena would love that. She talks about Catherine all the time. She misses her so much." "So do I," Daniel said. "So do I." Rosa stood to leave, then hesitated. "Mr. Crawford, Daniel," he corrected, "please. Daniel, there's something else you should know. Catherine kept journals about the people she helped, the lives she touched. She said she wanted to remember every person, every story. She kept them in a safety deposit box downtown. She gave me a key just in case. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should make sure you got them." Daniel's breath caught. "You have them? I've been waiting for the right time. I think this is it." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small key on a simple chain. "Bank of America on Market Street, box 2847. Her name and yours are both on it." Daniel took the key, his hands trembling. It was warm from being in Rosa's pocket. This key to a part of his wife's life he'd never known existed. "Thank you," he whispered. Rosa nodded, then turned to leave. She paused after a few steps and looked back. "She loved you very much, you know. She talked about you all the time, about how proud she was of you, how hard you worked, how much good you were doing in the world. She said you were her rock, her home. This other part of her life, it wasn't because you weren't enough, it was because you were everything. And that security, that love, gave her the strength to help others." Daniel couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears blurring his vision. He watched Rosa walk away, her thin coat pulled tight against the November chill. Then he turned back to Catherine's grave, to the grocery store daisies lying against the marble, and he finally understood. His wife had been extraordinary, not just in the ways he'd known, her intelligence, her humor, her grace, but in ways he was only now discovering. She'd lived a secret life of kindness, touching people he'd never met, changing futures he'd never see, leaving ripples of goodness that would extend far beyond her years. "I'm sorry I didn't know," he said aloud to the stone, "but I'm going to make sure your work continues, I promise." The next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, Rosa arrived at the cemetery to find Daniel already there. He'd brought roses, the expensive kind, dozens of them, and grocery store daisies. When Rosa approached, he handed her half the daisies. "I thought we could visit her together from now on," he said. Rosa smiled, took the flowers, and together they knelt by the grave. It was the first Tuesday of many, and slowly, carefully, Daniel began to learn the full story of the woman he'd married, not just the half he'd known, but the secret half that had made her complete. Through Rose's stories, through Catherine's journals, through meeting the other people she'd helped, he discovered a legacy richer than any fortune he'd built. And every Tuesday at 3 o'clock without fail, 2 people brought flowers to Catherine Crawford's grave. One brought roses, one brought daisies, and both brought love, gratitude, and the promise to continue her work in the world. Because some legacies are meant to be kept secret for a while, but all legacies, eventually, are meant to be shared.